What you call that noise?
The XTC Podcast.
What do you call that noise?
What do you call that noise?
Andy Partridge and Stu Rowe have been working together since the recording of Monstrance in 2006. Andy then produced Jen Olive's album Warm Robot for his Ape House label in 2009, and then Stu produced Jen's album The Breaks in 2013. Somewhere in between all of that, they laid down a whole series of improvisatory ideas which have lain dormant on hard drives, and now we can hear what they were up to with the release of the 3 Clubmen EP, which features 4 tracks that have been chopped up, sampled and rearranged over a 10-year period. My name is Mark Fisher, and I'm thrilled to introduce What Do You Call That Noise, the XTC podcast, and the final instalment of a trio of interviews. To mark the arrival of Aviatrix, Race Car, Green Green Grasshopper, and Look at Those Stars, the podcast has temporarily turned from monthly to weekly. 2 weeks ago, we heard Stu Rowe saying...
With Andy, often I've actually been in the room where he'll grab a guitar and his mind's working so fast. It's hard to keep up.
Last week, we heard Jen Olive saying...
The central thrill of Andy is his use of all the notes in a particular octave or 3 or 4. Andy uses everything. Like we talked about Pink Thing, that melody, give me a break. That melody is crazy. It uses so many notes.
And this week, I'm naturally delighted to welcome back Andy Partridge to this podcast. And that is coming up in just a moment. But first, it's time for our monthly spot in which you, the listeners, entertain us with your XTC-inspired songs. Since the start of the year, we've heard great music from John Bicknell, Warren Butson, Christopher Underwood, Jeff Nicholson and Joel Bell. And last week, we heard Mark Sandra of Cone of Silence with Richard Nixon. Now it's the turn of Mario Rodriguez Centeno from La Junta, which Mario describes as a post-punk proggy band from Spain. And here is Mario to introduce Mudeja.
What do you call that noise?
Hola amigos de What Do You Call That Noise, and hello Mark. My name's Mario. I'm the singer and double bass player in the Spanish post-punk band from Andalusia called La Junta. Kind of like junta, but spelled with a V to tell ourselves apart from the local government, which has the same name. So we're from Jerez, where sherry wine and flamenco come from. And I think Jerez is pretty much the Swindon of Spain. There's a connection between England and my hometown, since the Industrial Revolution turned us into the wine giants that we are now, and the English brought us the machines. And that's why we have brandy names like Garvey's, Terry, and Osborne, but also why we're obsessed with dressing like English landowners and looking down on our own language and culture. There's also the blue tile industry in Seville, which is nearby and produces luxury tiles for the British aristocracy. There must be really old buildings in England featuring some of those. So there's a connection between our cultures. Also, my small town beat the capital city, Madrid, to the railway punch, being the second town in Spain to have a train line. And that transformed it completely from a small town to a then industrial powerhouse, and now back to a decadent backwater, sadly. I wonder what Andy would think of that connection to Swindon. So, Mudejar is our latest single, and it's about losing and finding one's own identity, the cultural inferiority complex, embracing your own roots, all that. Because much like XTC, we're mocked for the Swindon accent. Us Andalusians have a hard time being taken seriously by fellow Spaniards, being the Spanish Texas and all that. It's a love letter to the railway station's facade, which has a unique 19th century style where English red bricks meet Andalusian blue tiles and Arabic archways. It's really unique. So the song is kind of like Towers of London in that respect. It's the same kind of theme. Although it doesn't sound a thing like XTC, I think. Sorry for the long bit, and I forgot to say that the song is in Spanish, but I don't think that's keeping any prog rock fans from enjoying it anyway. Feel free to follow us, and thank you for having us.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Mario Rodriguez Centeno. And you can find more if you do a search for La Junta online, and that's spelt JVNTA, so not the expected U, JVNTA, La Junta. And if you're a musician and you've written something inspired by XTC in some way, I'd love to hear from you. It doesn't have to sound like XTC. It could do, it might not, but just as long as it's got some connection. And if you've got something that fits the bill, just get in touch with me at mark@xtclimelight.com. Now, of course, it's my time to shout out to the very, very wonderful supporters on Patreon whose donations keep the XTC podcast running and you in listening pleasure. It'd be great if you'd like to join them. Just go to patreon.com/Mark Fisher and you can choose the level of support you'd like to give. If you choose to be a knight in shining karma, it's your chance to get your name read out at the end of each episode. And if you have an appetite for even more XTC, remember you can buy your copy of What Do You Call That Noise? An XTC Discovery book at xtclimelight.com. Right, we've had the story so far from Stu Rowe and Jen Olive. Let's turn to Andy Partridge. Andy, welcome back to the podcast. It's always a delight to hear from you. One thing I was thinking about, particularly with you and the three Clubmen, is that something that you've said before is that, and you were saying this in relation to my failed songwriting career, is that you see yourself as a band member rather than as a solo musician. And I was wondering whether this is a good example of you as a band member, because there are equal contributions all round.
Well, the thing is, I don't think of the three Clubmen as a band.
Well, that's another answer, yeah.
It's a project. It's, we're not going to be jumping in a van and touring around working men's clubs and stuff saying, here we are, folks, it's a project. It was an improvisational project that we just threw so much stuff at it that Stu would keep saying, I've been looking at this stuff we've been recording. We've got to release it. We've got to release it. I was playing it to a friend and he was saying, oh, God, you've got to get this out. You've got to get this out. And so it was a case of, it was sort of like a secret improvisation project that became kind of songs that became inevitable that we release. So I don't think of it as a band. We're not sat around saying, what sort of uniform are we going to have? Are we going to have like collars where they're cut off? And, do we all have the same hairdo? Ha ha. So I don't think of it as a band in a kind of classic sense. It's a project.
Yeah, remarkably, Stu and you do have the same haircut.
Yeah, well, yeah, nearly Jen too. She shaved her head a few times as well.
But yeah, so it's not a band, but it is a collaboration, and it isn't you saying, "Hey, I am Andy Partridge, and these are my mates." It's a three-way thing.
Yeah, but XTC was largely a 3 or 4 way thing, and it was, it wasn't me saying you'll do this and you'll wear this and you'll say this. It was, it was democratic, and
but that is sort of my point. It's that that even though you are the songwriter, or you wear the songwriter in XTC, or the key songwriter, that you've always thought of yourself as one of the team, not as a kind of
mentally
David Bowie standing out. Yeah,
no, mentally I don't like to be the grand poobah saying you do it like this or you're out. I've never said that to anyone. There's a misconception online, and I saw something the other day which I shouldn't have seen, because it's one of those things where if you go eavesdropping about yourself, you won't hear any good. They were going on about, Andy fired Barry, Andy fired Terry, Andy fired Dave, and Andy fired Colin eventually. Ha ha ha. No, I never sacked anyone from the band. They all left because they wanted to do something different. They wanted to be somewhere different. They wanted to do a different project. It's not me saying, you will do this. It is mine way or the highway. There was none of that. That upsets me that people have that concept. Nobody was sacked. Nobody, Barry Andrews wanted to do his own music in his own band. Okay, he left. Bye-bye. It was nice knowing you, Terry Chambers was told he had to go and live in Australia, so he had to go and live in Australia. It's, okay, we can't really stop that. We're not married to Terry. We're not Terry's child. We can't. It's not an emotional hold like that. So, and then Dave was just, I think, a bit fed up with getting farther and farther away from guitars, and left when it all got a little bit too orchestral. So nobody's been sacked, and I'm not the sacker.
And you are also a collaborator, and I mean, again, we've seen that with my failed songwriter career. But when I was talking to Stu about this, and he said, "Well, one thing about playing with other musicians is it's just good fun."
Oh, it is good fun.
It's better than being on your own.
See, I miss it. I mean, I'm always saying to Erica, look, I really miss having a band and having somebody who I can take the ideas to, and they can interpret it. Oh, I think it should go like this. Oh, I'll tell you what you need. You need this, or you need these keys, or this guitar, or you need a little choir here, or whatever you need, And I miss that personally. So the Clubmen project was nice to fire things out and then have other people say, well, I've got an idea. It might be better than that. Try this, and that's wonderful.
It seems to me when I listen to those songs, the 4 songs on the EP, is I can sort of hear everybody's contribution, but it's all fitting in very, very snugly. It doesn't feel like anybody has been forced out or anybody's voice is dominating anybody else's voice. It feels like it's a real 3-way contribution. Did it feel like that to you as you were creating them?
Yeah, it doesn't. You don't record anything thinking, I wonder if Jen's going to like this, or I wonder if Stu's going to chop this bit out, or it all we just throw stuff at it. And if somebody likes a bit of it and responds to it, Stu will call me up and say, hey, that when we got together the other day and we just ran through da 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 da, I really like that bit and I'll send it to you. But this bit you did here, I really like that. I think we should use that and work on that for the second section of the number or whatever. So it's kind of this weird congealing, evolving, slow motion songwriting, or is it songwriting? Because I guess it is songwriting because there's vocals on most of it, so that makes it a song. But we don't. We throw stuff and then see what's stuck. I mean, for example, with Aviatrix, I had this idea that I went down to Stu's one afternoon, and I've got here one I made earlier, and I just had this lovely little idea for a melody that reminded me of Mama's Little Baby Loves Shortening Bread, and it was Mama's little baby loves shortening, Mama's little baby loves shortening bread. It was that little melody. So we recorded it at a set sort of tempo. Okay, here's a click, 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 click. Then we said, you know what, this is quite nice. Let's send it to Jen. But oh dear, what if it's the wrong key for her to singing? Well, okay, we'll record it in another key as well. So that was in A, so we recorded it in B. What if that's still too low? Why don't we try C as well? And I think we recorded it in 8 different keys or more. And we couldn't decide which one was going to work best. And we came up with the idea that we have to pick a key. So I think we picked starting it in the A section. But what we did was, with all the other takes in different keys, we faded up slowly other keys. So instead of going change to another key here and change to another key there, what it does is it strangely crosses over and it's in 2 keys simultaneously. Then it seems to clear into another key. Then a third key will crossfade slowly, and it's like fog clearing, and I'm in a purple room, and then the fog comes in again. I'm in a green room. And so instead of deciding which chords to jump to, we crossfaded them, so it made this strange musical indecision, which we all found really attractive,
and also not sort of possible without studio technology. And it's like the way it's created is entirely based on the idea of loops and repetitions. And
I mean, you could do it
building bit by bit.
You could do it live if you had like 8 or 10 different guitarists all sort of slowly, quietly playing their key and then getting louder and the other one getting quieter. But Yeah, you have to have a mixing desk to be able to do that kind of thing.
Now, I made the mistake of thinking that the bit that you've just played was something that Jen had come up with, because it sounds so like the kind of loops and repetitions that she puts on Warm Robot and
yeah, exactly.
the
No, it was totally, like I said, I just had this idea that afternoon of, I just stumbled into that. It sounds like shortening bread. I really like that, because I really like shortening bread. Because I think Meccanik Dancing is based on shortening bread as well.
Oh yeah.
Woolworths Beauty Factory Bow, amen. They must go. Da, 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 da. Obviously, deeply affected by that song as a kid. And hang on, the door is going. Hello. Okay. Hi. Okay. Bye. So it's a little bit of verite for you.
At home with the Partridges.
At home, yeah. If only I had a little diplodocus that then romped in and I could give it a bone, eat the only mammal we can find. Let's change evolution. Yeah, I think I was deeply affected by shortening bread as a kid. It went in there very deep. It's come out at least twice that I know of. It's the and then we got the dun, 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 dun. It's shortening bread. I've no idea how old that song is, shortening bread.
Yeah, it kind of feels like it should be traditional, doesn't it? But it could be from any point in the 20th century.
Trad R, Trad A-double-R.
Who wrote a lot of songs, that guy.
Mr. Trad R, good old Trad.
I don't think you've written in that way before, have you? Is it unique to this project?
I've not written in this way of people firing ideas with no expectations. I mean, the 4 songs that are coming out, God, I think there's maybe another dozen laying around on computers that we thought, okay, well, let's come back to those. These ones seem to be coming near the top quicker or stronger, whatever. So we'll work on these. I mean, when we check out what else is laying there may be some other goodies there that we've just passed by, because we started this not as a set project, but we started this kind of hobby quite a while ago.
Is it weird that these have been lying around for 10 years, or did they need 10 years to gestate?
Is it weird? Yeah, it's a bit weird, but then if music's good, it doesn't have an age on it. I've been really getting into 30s and 40s music a lot lately, and I don't feel it's old-fashioned. I just feel it's great music. I'm way past that thing. I got to have this week's music and nothing else will do. Oh, that's so last week. Oh, that doesn't interest me. That's just for morons.
So 30s and 40s music that you've been listening to, is that kind of Tin Pan Alley stuff, or what kind of genre?
Yes, mostly you'd call it jazz. Jazz, even blues. In the last couple of weeks, for some reason, I've been playing a lot of blues and even a more modern interpretation of the blues. Like I'm rediscovering the 60s Fleetwood Mac all over again for some reason. Just that tremolo, Danny Kerwin's tremolo. What a wonderful sound.
And like you say with shortening bread, that there's a tendency to assume that music began with Elvis in the 1955 or something, but then you hear what you've just played, actually, that I would never have made a connection between Goto and trad.
It's the music. Just it's like water. It flows everywhere. It flows through the cracks everywhere, and like water can always get through. I think music can always get through. If you don't stop up every little nook and cranny and no music's gonna ever get in, it'll come through the bird song or the howling of creatures or people passing by yelling at themselves or whatever in a drunken fury. You can't stop music. It's impossible.
And you can't also assume that people from one generation were better or worse than another generation.
No, they're not. No, I'd say every generation has got fantastic music, and well, about 5% of it is fantastic. The other 95% is just padding. But you find that in all art forms. 95% of books are padding. 95% of popular music is padding. 95% of opera is padding. 95% of sculpture is padding. 5% of it will be really wonderful, real genius stuff, really high quality. This is going to last forever. But most of it is that's just the sparkling frost borne up on the top of the mass of the 95%.
Yeah, and I think that I agree with you. It's inevitable. I think it just has to be. I remember working for a magazine where books would come. It was when books still came in the post. They weren't sent digitally, and all of these books would come to the books editor, and you thought nobody's got time to even begin to read them. Never mind discover whether they're any good or not. And they can't possibly be. These books are not going to sell any because there are too many of them, and they can't all be good, and probably they're very bad. But as you say, 5% will float to the top, and they'll be discovered. I think.
Yeah, I think so. And sometimes part of that 5% is artificially hyped and pushed to the top. But I think the years will calm that down. People will say, why did we go crazy for this thing, whatever it is, music, book, whatever it is? Why did we go crazy for this 10 years ago or 20 years ago? When all's said and done, this is actually shite. And I think there is a certain leveling process, but about 5% will be wonderful.
Well, and talking about that 5%, I would include Jen Olive in the 5%, but nobody's heard of her.
Oh man,
Sing the praises of Jen Olive to me.
She is a ferocious talent. Just her grasp on timing alone. Like she feels things in different timings to me. When all's said and done, I'm a little bit of a corny old groove meister. And she can skate over the top of the tempo and the meter. She hears things in unusual meters, and she feels totally at home with that. Apparently, I mean, she wrote a song. Stu edited more or less the first time I met Stu. He said, This Monstrance thing you're doing, can I have some of it to edit and play with? Yeah, sure, And so he edited a little tiny piece. It was very strange piece he took because we worked out it was in a timing of 15. And normally things are counted in 4s, or if you're Austrian from Vienna, they're counted in 3s. If you're Dave Brubeck, they're counted in 5s. But or unsquare dance, I think was 7. But no, most things are in 4s. And he chopped up this little piece that looped around in 15. And it was like, wow, that's so unusual. He sent it to Jen, and she actually came back with some song ideas perfectly tailored to this piece of music with 15 beats in it. And I thought that was so unusual. It was really inspiring. So we had to sort of take it apart and rebuild it under her vocal ideas, rebuilt it so that we could mix it properly. It wasn't just a set piece of stereo. We could say, oh, we'd like that guitar louder, or that guitar on that side, or whatever it was. We'd like to add a tambourine there, or whatever the thing you want to do with it. So we had to rebuild this strange 15-beat piece of music, and it's come out as one of the numbers on the 3 Clubmen EP is called Race Car.
Race Car sounds to me like you're doing a bit of beef-art in there as well. Those choppy guitars.
I think I am. Yeah, it was just like, as I say, it was just a loop of one of the pieces from Monstrance. I think it was called Chain Gang on Monstrance. But he locked this piece out that was 15 beats long, which I'm sure that's standard thing in Indian music. That's the sort of stuff they go for.
But Jen said, because I was talking to Jen about working with you, and she said that whereas other A&R men and producers and whatever she'd worked with, were saying, oh, you've got too many notes. What do you do? When she presented her stuff to you and also to Stu later, the two of you just kind of said, yeah, that's interesting. We'll just go for that. There was something about your musical landscape and worldview that fits with hers.
Well, I just think she's very talented. I mean, she's her like I say, her grasp of the way things flow over the top of a certain rhythm, like somebody normal, inverted commas, here's their and they may sing like that, but you give that to Jen and she may sing like that, and it comes back a totally different feel, and you think, that is great. Why didn't I hear it like that? Why didn't I hear it wrong like that? Because wrong is so much more thrilling.
Yeah. And how did it feel when, because of that nature of the collaboration, you'd do something, she'd do something, Stu would do something, and you'd be batting it back and forth when you got to hear the bits that she'd filled in that you'd left her to do?
Well, it doesn't always work, Like I say, some of it's like, don't know if I'm liking that. And then other things that come back and go, whoa, that is genius. Where did that come from, So it's hit and miss, but that's the same with all improvised music.
Mm-hmm.
Great improvisers like Can, for example, German band Can. I forget what they said their rate would be, but they'd improvise for 3 or 4 hours and they'd take 20 minutes of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same with Miles Davis's bands from the late 60s onwards. They do 3 or 4 hours, and then they might get 10 to 20 minutes out of that, which they can put on record. And it's you're just picking the best of the best, and it means that to find the gold nuggets, there's an awful lot of soil you've got to shovel away.
And do you think there's a certain sort of personality that means, in the case of the three Clubmen, that the three of you, I can only presume that the three of you have got a similar attitude, that you're going to say yes, not no. You're going to say, oh, let's try this, rather than be censorious and say, oh no, that's not working, let's just ditch that and do it straight or whatever.
Well, I mean, I don't see us all climbing into one big bed, but I do think we have the thing where if somebody has an idea, okay, let's hear it, let's try it. I think you'd be stupid to say anything else. That was also the thing with XTC. If somebody had an idea, it'd be okay, let's hear it, let's try it. And sometimes it'd be a lot better than the one you had in your head. And you think, oh, we're going for that. That's made the song a lot better. That's really improved that, or that's really improved that section. That's really improved the feel of the whole thing of it, whatever the idea was. And I think to do otherwise is insane. You may as well be a one-man band and not listen to anyone else and not take on any more suggestions. You have to be open, and you have to be open to things that you couldn't have grasped, or not grasped, you couldn't have come up with in the first place. Somebody else might come up with them.
Like in the world of comedy improvisation, the technique is to say yes and rather than no. Because if
if you say no, you're just shutting
it down. And I imagine there's a sort of similar thing there, that you can't, even if somebody comes up with a terrible idea, you can build on a terrible idea, but if they come up with no idea at all because they're scared of you, then you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah. I don't think there's any such thing as a terrible idea. I think you can almost use anything. No matter how crap it is, you can, if you get enough shit in a pile, you can make a statue out of it.
One of the things I think about these 4 songs, which I love, by the way, on the Three Clubmen EP, is they fit very well together as an EP, so that you've got the sort of brashness of Race Car, but you've also got the melody of Look at These Stars, and if they fit very well together as a foursome. I think that's a good aspect of it.
Yeah, it's a nice little collection. Yeah. I want Stu to dig out all of the recordings. I said to him, look, just send me everything that we've got in that box. And who knows, there may be another EP there, maybe even an album. There's loads of stuff there.
So you're not ruling out that possibility? That could still happen?
It could still happen once we get digging through and having a look. We've just kind of tended to look at the ones that each of us have got a favorite and maybe one joint favorite. So we've looked at those, but there may be others there that we can. I'll tell you what, if we cut that bit out, nobody's liking that bit. and we try that piece in there. It's in a different key, but you know what? We could do this with it and make it work, you know. And so open to everything.
Yeah.
All gates open, I think was William Burroughs' phrase.
Well, I'd be excited to hear more of that. And the thing that I think is also interesting in terms of the stuff that I've heard you do, including my failed songwriting career, is I don't think I've ever heard you effectively do a duet, so that you'll do one verse and then Jen will come in with a chorus. You know, that's a very unusual world for you to be in, isn't it?
Right. Well, you got to remember that I mean, things like Green Green Grasshopper, it was just an idea I had about singing or telling a grasshopper to take this to somebody, take this message to somebody, and she came back. She didn't continue that. She came back with almost a contrary opinion of that. If you read her lyric, it's not argumentative, but it's sort of contrary to, like, I'm really bugging her, or this grasshopper is bugging her and stay away from me. And but it worked. The whole thing works. It's contrary, but it works. It's and I don't think that what she came up with is specifically a chorus it's just another part. It's another panel in the costume you've put on. You know, oh, look, I didn't look at it below the waist. That's nice color. I didn't see it going like that, you know.
And that must be nice for you, because it isn't something that you've really done quite like that before. I suppose you've done it musically, but not really with vocals in that way.
No, it's nice it's nice to send a piece of a song to somebody, and then it comes back with a totally different viewpoint on where she thinks it might go, or can you use this piece, or try this chunk, or, you know, I improvise this. Can you do anything with it?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we do. I'll improvise things and send them over, or send them down to Stu, or I'll go down to Stu's place, Stu's studio, which is not a song by Genesis. And we'll just batter ideas about. But we do kind of quite a lot of that anyway. It's good fun.
And would it be the case if you'd have written a song in that kind of standard songwriter way, would you be more precious and worried that somebody was coming on and adding a bit that you hadn't expected, or was kind of trying?
Yeah, to some extent. I mean, if I'm writing songs for other people, and I've done quite a lot of that in the last X amount of months. So there's an EP on the horizon with Chris Braid, an English songwriter who lived in LA for a while. Now he's back in London. And I think there's 5 or 6 tracks on an EP coming out with him. There's about half a dozen numbers on an album with Steve Conti, New York guitarist,
mm-hmm.
who was a one-time New York doll, and has his own career. And so there's all sorts of stuff kind of threatening to come out there. But if I'm writing with or for other people, there's usually a set choice of rails to go down. Okay, we're going, you know, I would really like a song that would arrive at this junction. And so you aim for that junction. But with the Clubmen, there is no aiming for anything. We just take the train off the track and just go somewhere.
Yeah.
There's no expectation of looking for a set anything. And like I say, that with improvisation, it doesn't always work, but when it does, it seems, well, how do we find that?
I think when I talk about collaboration, it feels, that's what I mean. I think when those 4 songs just sound like all 3 of you contributing. They don't sound like one or other of you. They just sound like this is the only noise that these 3 people could make collectively. It's not.
Well, I mean, there's different people bring different things. Stu likes a lot of kind of dubby and slow. How shall I say? I mean, he comes from a background of Future Sound of London and the kind of that sort of Bristol dubby sort of sound. So he tends to think in that way, and he's also got like a real monk way of thinking about keyboard playing, a dub reggae thing about bass playing. So that those are some of the things he brings to the table. Jen can bring almost a 1940s or 50s kind of swing band style of harmonizing to things, and you think, wow, would have never thought of that working in there, you know. And I'm not sure what I bring. I think it'd be freaky if I realized what it was. It may stop me functioning altogether, you know. But yeah, so it's a nice. It does seem to work. These ingredients do make an interesting stew.
Mm-hmm. And part of that interesting stew is just the vocal quality that you and Jen bring. That your voices just sound nice together. And she told me the story that you'd mixed down one of her vocals to make it, and she thought it was you singing along, but it was actually hers that you'd reduced. I think maybe this was on the first album you did with her, but that you just reduced a song, a recording by an octave, which it kind of made her think, did I sing that, or was that Andy singing that, or whatever? But your voices sound well together.
Yeah, I remember doing that, and I didn't know her enough at the time to say, well, I think that needs a low octave. I'll just sing that, because I didn't want to be singing her on her album without kind of permission. I didn't want to barnstorm in and say, you need a deep voice there, you know. So I electronically made it an octave lower with hers, and she seemed to like it. And in retrospect, maybe, oh, damn it, I could have just sung that.
Yeah.
But it worked. So
yeah.
whatever works.
And on this EP, it works that your voices go well together. It's not, you're not coming from completely different worlds, I don't think.
Yeah. Her voice is, when she tracks up her voice and does these very kind of, like I say, almost swing band, honey kind of arrangement ideas. I feel like I should be on stage with a big megaphone introducing her. Here she is, ladies and gentlemen. You know. Da-dun.
I think the question I was sort of angling at earlier was like, in terms of personality and just aesthetic preference, that it seems to me anyway that the three of you have got something in common, so that you can work together, isn't it? You couldn't just choose any three musicians and imagine that you would be able to go down this route and produce this thing.
No, maybe the chemicals are just sympathetic. Is chemicals, is that the word I need? No, maybe not. Yeah, chemicals will do for now.
Yeah.
Maybe the chemicals are sympathetic in us, that I think we're all just allowing of whatever they want to try. Just try it. Sure, it may be completely wrong. Try it. You know, the idea of recording a song in 8 to 10 different keys simultaneously seems insane, but we made something happen out of it.
Yeah.
And if we hadn't have tried it, we wouldn't have discovered that, you know.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking back when you first heard Jen's music, when she just sent you a cassette or something in the post when you were setting up your record label. That must have felt like a very fortuitous discovery so early on in what you were doing then.
Yeah, I just knew this person has got something that I've never quite heard before.
Yeah.
And the world needs to hear this.
I mean, it strikes me that she's not like Björk and she's not like Kate Bush, but she's like them in the sense that she has she just goes in the direction that she wants to go. She's not asking permission.
It's that really valuable thing, uniqueness.
Yeah.
You know, that's much more valuable. I think that's forget the gold standard. We should be trading in uniqueness.
Again, musically, that she was saying that surely that's the thing that people want. That's the thing that, you know, listeners really want. And although I'm just going to quote Funk Papa Roll to you, they're force-fed this other stuff that they want. But
well, you know, it is what listeners want. They don't know it's what they want, but it's what they want. They want uniqueness. But the listener usually doesn't know that, but when they're exposed to it, they can get into it. And record companies and people in the puppet masters, shall we say, they never know it's uniqueness that's required. They always think, oh, we've got to have the new.
Mm-hmm.
You know, last week was selling loads of records, music, download, streaming. We need a new this week, and they want to base it all on the same pattern, the same template. And I think that's really wrong think. I think it should be, let's find as many different things as we can find. That's where the 5% magic stuff lay, but not the 95% that it's just a carbon copy of last week's thing.
Yeah. And one of I think it's through doing the podcast and talking more to you and listening to people like Stephen Wilson and so on, the more I'm realizing that people who are successful musicians don't allow themselves to be contained by expectations, and they, like you were just saying, that you'll listen to 30s and 40s music and then something from the 60s and then a bit of jazz and then a bit of this, and even in the late 1970s, when there was an expectation that you had to be a bit punky and a bit new wave-ish, you were not. You were still absorbing all of these other and regurgitating all of these other influences, and that seems to be true of all of you as XTC as a band, but also all of the people that you've collaborated with as well. They've got their ears open to the world.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if there's any true thing as originality. I think what it is you're always the product of all of the things you've seen, heard, read, eaten, done, all of your sensory input from the age of -9 months onwards. And the fact that if you try and get out your own thing, or your raw material is going to be this sensory input from then, but you're going to get it out and it's going to come out wrong. And that is the nearest we can have to originality, is wrong other stuff, wrong sensory input from back then.
And that puts me in mind about when you're collaborating with other people, and you just gave 2 examples of it, that in a way you're being asked to do the right thing. You're being able to say, let's create music that fits this pattern. Is that true to say?
With other people, or with
well, when you're writing with or for other people?
Well, usually when you write with or for other people, they're usually asking you for a type of thing.
Yeah.
This art, either their manager will talk to you, or their publisher, or their record label, or whatever. It's usually not the artist themselves. They're living in the rarefied atmosphere, darling. They're being borne aloft on a raft of caviar. They'll say, my artist wants a song that sounds a bit like mixed with da-da, but with a dash of da-da-da-da in it. Okay. And then you go away and you try and build this Frankenstein's monster. And 9 times or 99 times out of 100, it'll be, no, they didn't like it. I've been asked to, I got asked to write some stuff for I'll say his name, for Liam Gallagher.
Oh yeah.
Can you the publisher was asking me, can you make it a bit like da 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 with a dash of George Harrison in it, with a dash of da 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 in it, And I came up with half a dozen ideas, and no, it was all fucking shite. So, but in that process, you end up writing a lot of songs, and you've got to think those songs are okay, or else you'd never bring them up and want your name on them.
Mm-hmm.
I would never bring up anything that I would feel disgraced by.
But at the same time, they're not the songs that you would have written for yourself, if you see what I mean.
No, because you're playing dress up. You're at a masked ball. Someone else is throwing a masked ball. You have to use very tiny masks when you do that. Someone else is throwing a masked ball, and they said the theme is jungle party, or the theme is vampire night out, or whatever it is. And so you are dressing to appear at their masked ball, either as a jungle theme or a vampire theme or whatever it is. and you try and do your darndest, and hopefully they will say, "That's just right. I'm going to do that." But it frequently doesn't work, you know.
Mhm. I'm looking to my list of other things that need to be discussed. You have a re-release of Go-To about to come out on thick vinyl.
Yes, Go-To is or what was Barry Andrews' previous suggestion? Strong and Silent. What he wanted to call the album, and he wanted to put a post box on the front, pillar box, so it was strong and silent.
Silent. Yeah.
But for some reason, nobody clicked with that. It's not a bad idea, actually, but
It's strong, but it's not silent.
no. Well, I still wanted to. I think second album in, we got to hang on to a certain musical thread. We got to hang on to a certain visual thread. Maybe by album 3, that can start to change and open up. You know, I sort of had a long-term strategy planned, but so Go-To is coming out or is out, and has the Go Plus vinyl EP with it. If you get the vinyl version, it's a gatefold pack with Go Plus, which is nice to hear in all its mangled glory.
There are different strands of the re-release thing where, and we'll come on to one of them in a moment, but sometimes the difference is that you've remastered it, I think, is that correct? And it's on heavy vinyl. It's on a heavier sort of vinyl.
Yeah, it's on a 200-gram vinyl. Remastered. I don't know if it could be remixed, because all remixing for us is done by Stephen Wilson these days, and he's purely digital. And the effects making up Go Plus are all analog. They're different speeds of tape. They're analog boxes that do certain effects, some of them impossible to kind of approach with digital. Layered things, which I'm not sure. I guess we could do some of those layered things. It would be very difficult to remix it and get it to sound the same or approaching the same, which was something that John Leckie and I, a couple of years back, actually just before lockdown, John Leckie and I were asked to appear at the South Bank, the What's It Theatre on the South Bank. What's that called? The concretey one.
The Festival Hall.
Festival Hall,
Yeah.
This chap who I can't remember his name, he was totally obsessed with Take Away Law of Salvage and Go Plus. And he wanted us to make it live on stage.
Wow.
And I said, well, you can't, because it was improvised, and again, with improvisation, we only kept the stuff that worked, and it's not a performance art. You just see two shadow figures on stage, moving their hands on faders and hitting the occasional button. It is not it would make a completely 1,000% naff live performance, and naff, that's naff as in, it's a little bit of Polari, that. It's NAFF. Oh, not available for fucking. That was it. So, what do you think to her? Oh, naff love, naff. That's what it meant. Not available. But this, so John Leckie and I, this chap, we all went out to lunch, and this chap went off to the toilet, and John Leckie and I said, look, this is not going to happen, is it? This is not, it's going to be crap, isn't it? If we're just in the shadows, it's just going, looking to say, oh no, it doesn't sound anything like that. Oh no, that doesn't sound like it either, So we said no.
No, yes, probably advisedly, although it's a fascinating idea to think that
it's a fascinating idea.
To even think about it.
Yeah, we couldn't get near it,
Yeah. And is Go-To sounding good?
Oh, it sounds lovely. It sounds. It has a certain sound. It had a sound of where John Leckie was as an engineer and a producer at that point, and it sounds a little narrower than our later recordings. But that's the sound of us at that time. We were still, the Treble Brothers, and everything barked and drilled your ears, as John Leckie will tell you in interviews, once Barry clicked on that treble boost on the piano and the distortion on the piano, it's like, ow, you know. But he had to beat my guitar out, so that was it. You know, it was an arms race. The left side of the stage versus the right side of the stage. Which one is going to create the nuclear holocaust? You know, the sonic holocaust. Oh, no, it sounds good. It sounds as good as it's ever going to be, I think.
And for skeptics, do you think it does make a difference to have it on heavy vinyl?
Yeah, it's you know. Damn it, vinyl still sounds better. If vinyl is 100% of the sound, then CD is something like 25% of the sound. 75% of the sound is of any taped sound is missing when you put it onto digital format. You can get higher percentage with higher rates of, you know, if you have it on 90 kilohertz, that's going to be getting a bit closer to analog sound, or if you have, you know, 120 odd kilohertz, that's going to be a bit closer again, but still nothing quite has got that tape to vinyl. This is all the sound, there is none missing, you know.
And heavier vinyl versus cheapy thin vinyl.
Yeah, we never want to go near that. I used to work in a Bon Marché record store when the Hot Tuna vinyl was released. I remember that, and somebody said, "Oh, that's an offshoot of Jefferson Airplane." Oh, really? But all I knew is when you took the disc out of the card sleeve, it literally hung over your hand. It was that thin. It was like a flexi disc.
Yeah. I'm just thinking of Flexi Pop magazine that I dutifully bought to get.
Well, imagine albums of that. You know, that's what. God, what was the label? Was it RCA? Can't remember whether it was RCA or Warner. I think one of those two. But you know, I remember taking this Hot Tuna album out of the thick card sleeve in the store, thinking, "Oh, that's a very thick card sleeve. I wonder why that's thicker than normal." Well, it was because it was this sort of handful of liquid inside that was an album, you know. Couldn't get it any thinner.
And then I guess finally on the subject of audio quality, we've got the Big Express, which has had one airing that Stephen Wilson did to test it out, and is, I think, being released in the autumn. So I'll do further podcasts about that. But a slight surprise to find the Big Express at all being released.
Yeah, it's shocking. I didn't go to the pitch black playback. Dave Gregory went to that and did a sort of Q&A type thing with Stephen, and who else went along to that? Oh, Pete Phipps, the original drummer on that record, and in fact the drummer on most of Mummer as well. I went to Stephen's house to hear his studio at his house, and I must say my head felt like a pedal bin and somebody had stepped on my tongue and the top of my head opened up. It was like, wow, where am I? What universe am I in? It was quite something. My first Atmos mix that I'd heard.
Yes, I'd be very interested to hear for any album. I've just never heard an Atmos thing.
No.
So I'd be
Well, with
fascinated.
5.1, it's all around you, but with Atmos, it's under you and above you as well. It's really 360 degree. What is it? 13 speakers or something like that. 13 channels of output, and yeah, literally the pedal bin thing. The top of my head lifted up, and it was like, whoa! Brain is getting blown away like dust. You know, it was quite an experience.
For an album that's often thought of as quite dense, I think what he's done is give it a bit of space and a bit of air and allow you here to...
Yeah, I don't think of these things as dense. I think of them as just detailed.
But you can hear the detail better than in this, in his...
You know, would you take some big oil paintings and say, "Oh, too dense, too
much
too many people in it, too many people"? Yes, there's too many people because it's a fucking battle scene. You know, you don't have a battle scene with 2 people in it. You know, or, oh, it's too dense, it's too dense. Yes, it's 100 ships coming out of Portsmouth Harbor or whatever. You know, it's called detail, folks. And all this thing about too dense, that really pisses me off. If you don't like it, skip the track. Don't buy the album. Skip the album. This thing of wow. I don't know where that came. A certain producer was being interviewed and said, you know what, Andy's mixes were too dense. No, they're not too dense. It's called detail.
But Stephen Wilson is good on detail, and he's good on letting you hear the detail.
Great. Yeah. No, he did usually 2 or 3 different revisions. He'd send me one mix and I'd hear it in stereo and I'd say, oh, tell you what, can we just tweak that bit down, that bit up a bit? You know what, that instrument could go out there a little farther on the right. And because he's got no precious ego, he'll do whatever you require, which is fantastic. I wish all mixers were like this, And it'd come back, and he'd usually get it in 2 or 3 passes, and I'd then inevitably think to myself, you know what, this is better than the original stereo. I can't wait for this to be made 3-dimensional, So I didn't hear it in 3 dimensions until I got to his home studio.
Yeah.
That was quite an event.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll definitely get you back on the podcast for that. But in the meantime, thank you very much, Andy Partridge, for everything, for being Andy Partridge, for being a clubman, and for all of those other stuff. Oh, actually, that's one more question I should have asked you: is are there more? And another thing, my failed songwriting career, is there more of that to come?
No, this is an odd one to finish on because that has been put on the high shelf for a while.
Right.
It's not selling as quickly and as well as we thought, so it's a case of fuck you then. I'll hang on until things are right.
A doubly failing record career. Not only did you fail it the first time, you failed it the second time as well.
Yeah, my doubly failed record career. People have asked me, "Oh, I think you should make an album or several albums of it," and I don't want it to be an album. I love the EP format, I really do. But pressing up EPs on vinyl is very expensive, as expensive as an album.
Oh, is it really? Yeah.
Yeah. So
with much, much smaller margins.
I'm kind of sick of losing money here. So I may do something in the future, but there are an awful lot of songs from the potential failed songwriting career. And like I say, I wouldn't want to put them out if I wasn't proud of them. I'm proud of them. But it's just I got to find the right vehicle for putting them out.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You see, albums are kind of too important, and everyone says, so is this the solo album? What's this the obsession with the solo album? I don't want, nothing I've ever made has been a solo album. Powers wasn't a solo album. It's an album. Takeaway, Law of Salvage was not a solo album. It was an album because I was the only one interested enough to turn up and make this dub thing with John Leckie. It was my excitement at the time. I wanted to do that. Nobody else in the band was particularly interested in that sort of technique,
Yeah, and also, as you were saying before, that these are not the songs you would have written if you were writing them as a solo album.
No, exactly. I don't even know if I have any personality of my own left over the years. I may agree with something that Graham Coxon said years ago, and I've often thought that this as well, that there may be a finite amount of music inside any musician, and I don't know whether I've got it all out. I'm not sure. I'm kind of down to scraping at the back of my knees now, so there may be a little bit more left in the calves and the ankles. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure about this because I'm getting on in years now. I'm coming up to 70, for goodness sakes. In my head, I feel more like I'm 7. But I'm coming up to 70, and you start getting a different perspective on things. You think, none of this is important. Music is like perfume. It's just you spray it in the air and you go, that's nice, and you get some nice thoughts of things that are happening simultaneously. And that's, if you smell that spray in the air again, it takes you back to, oh yeah, that was the day I had some peach pie or whatever it was, that was the day I met that beautiful woman, and music is very much like perfume. but maybe the atomizer is getting a bit low down now.
We just need to shake it a little bit.
Yeah, shake it a bit to pee in it and see if I can rejuvenate it.
And on that bombshell,
Folks.
From my perspective, it's like how you define your musicality, isn't it? Because it's like there's one thing about having something to say intellectually or emotionally or whatever, but that isn't to say that you're not capable or not still, clearly, because you still are writing songs, doing music, whatever, but it's just it has a different sort of weight behind it, doesn't it?
Has a different weight. It has a different weight when you're 15, it has a different weight when you're 25, 35, 45, 55, 65, and like I say, I'm scraping 70 now. So it has the coin has a different value mentally, spiritually, soulfully, whatever you want to say.
What do you call that noise?
Well. Thank you very much again to Andy Partridge, as well as Stu Rowe, as well as Jen Olive in our previous episodes. And thank you, of course, for listening. And thank you for supporting the podcast, and especially those of you who've supported the podcast at any level on Patreon. And you can join those people at patreon.com/Mark Fisher. And these are the Knights in Shining Karma: Terry Arnott, John Bicknell, Kevin Burt, Lorenzo Chachi, Cale Corbett, Liam Duggan, Jamie Dunn, Jeff Farris, Leslie Gooch, Mike Grafe, Robert Graham, Stephen Hope, Alan Hughes, Marek Kraus, Jesper Kumberg, Robert Lawlor, Dennis LeCourrier, Liz Lynch, Murray Meikle, Yusef Murrah, Karen Neal, Jeff Nicholson, Amy Parkinson, Mark Reed, James Reimer, Simon Slatehome, Michael Sutcliffe, Mark Thomas, Nigel Waller, and Martin Whitley. And great to have all of you on board. And I'll be back with another fantastic What Do You Call That Noise? An XTC podcast.